Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. I didn't expect to be thinking about Trina's love life again this soon, but here I am. The minute Simon walked onto the screen, I had that little feeling longtime soap fans know so well. Sometimes a brand new character doesn't just arrive to help someone's career. Sometimes that person quietly walks in to change someone's heart. Call it instinct, call it years of watching General Hospital, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just another business introduction. What really caught my attention wasn't some over-the-top romantic moment. It was how naturally Simon and Trina seemed to connect during their first meeting. Those little moments matter on a soap. Around here, a spark doesn't need fireworks. Sometimes it's just a look, a smile, or the way two people seem comfortable around each other before they even realize what's happening. That's the kind of slow burn I've always enjoyed, and it made me wonder if the writers are planting seeds for something much bigger. Simon made his first recurring appearance on the July 15 episode, and I have a feeling we've only seen the beginning. His role as Trina's music producer already gives him a reason to stay close to her world. That alone makes me pay attention, because General Hospital rarely brings in a recurring character without a purpose. In my experience, when someone new keeps showing up, there's usually a story waiting just around the corner. Watching Trina and Gio prepare for their big performance reminded me why I enjoy seeing these younger characters get a chance to shine. Brooklyn believed in Trina after hearing her perform at Charlie's months ago, and seeing her organize this opportunity felt like a proud mentor giving someone a real shot. Before Trina stepped onto that stage, I liked how Brooklyn calmed her nerves while Gio gave her one last boost of confidence. Those small moments of support made the performance feel earned instead of handed to her. Then there was Simon. I couldn't help noticing the chemistry between him and Trina from the moment they were introduced. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it felt genuine. Sometimes life works that way too. You meet someone unexpectedly, and before you know it, they're on your mind more than you expected. That's exactly the vibe I got from these two. Now, compare that with Trina and Kai, and I can't ignore the difference. I don't think they're a bad couple. They've shared some sweet moments and weathered their share of challenges. But if I'm being completely honest with myself, something has been missing. Every time I watch them together, I keep waiting for that emotional spark to jump off the screen, and it just doesn't. It isn't fair to compare every relationship to what Trina shared with Spencer, but that's exactly what many fans naturally do. Spencer set the bar awfully high, and Kai has struggled to reach it. That's why Simon has me curious. He represents a fresh start instead of trying to recreate the past. Maybe that's exactly what Trina needs. Not another Spencer, not another version of Kai, but someone who sees her for who she is becoming rather than who she used to be. One detail really stood out to me during the performance. Simon seemed more captivated by Gio's guitar skills than by Trina's singing. At first, I thought that was an odd choice, and Brooklyn was quick to remind him that the event was supposed to celebrate Trina. But the more I thought about it, the more I wondered if the writers were doing something clever. Maybe Simon's attention wasn't entirely about the music. Maybe they're simply taking their time, letting this connection grow naturally instead of rushing straight into romance. Around General Hospital, things are rarely as simple as they first appear. That's why I'm keeping a close eye on Simon. I wouldn't bet the farm on a romance just yet, but I also wouldn't be surprised if today's professional partnership slowly turns into tomorrow's love story. If that happens, I think Trina's next chapter could feel very different from anything we've seen since Spencer left her heart behind. The scene that stayed with me the longest came after Trina finished her first performance. Simon didn't rush over with praise just to make her feel good. Instead, he calmly told her he wanted to hear the song again, but this time he wanted her to let go of the nerves, stop worrying about getting every little detail perfect, and simply give him the real Trina. I have to admit, I smiled when I heard that, because it sounded exactly like something an experienced producer would say. He wasn't chasing technical perfection. He was chasing emotion, and in my opinion, that's where great music and great storytelling always begins. When Trina stepped back up for that second performance, I honestly felt like I was watching a different person. The hesitation that had been holding her back seemed to melt away. She looked more comfortable, more confident, and far more willing to trust herself. That change wasn't just noticeable to the audience. Simon noticed it immediately. You could almost see the moment when he realized that Trina had far more potential than she had shown the first time around. It wasn't about her voice getting magically better in a matter of minutes. It was about her finally allowing herself to perform from the heart. That's the kind of moment I love on General Hospital because it isn't loud or over the top. It's quiet, but it means something. It tells me that Simon understands Trina in a way that very few people have taken the time to do. He saw past the nervous performer standing on the stage and recognized the young woman who was afraid to believe in herself. In my experience, relationships often begin with exactly that kind of understanding. They don't start with dramatic kisses or grand declarations. They start when someone sees the best version of you before you can see it yourself. If Trina and Gio really are heading toward a recording contract, then Simon's role in this story is only going to grow. That alone gets my attention because General Hospital usually doesn't introduce a recurring character unless there are bigger plans waiting down the road. Simon isn't just some producer who walks in, signs paperwork, and disappears. If he's guiding Trina's career, he'll naturally become part of her everyday life. They'll spend hours together rehearsing, recording, making decisions, solving problems, celebrating victories, and dealing with disappointments. That's how people build trust. That's how friendships become something deeper without either person realizing it's happening. I've always believed that music creates connections in a way few other things can. When two people care deeply about the same passion, they begin speaking a language that nobody else fully understands. That's why I don't think Simon and Trina need forced romantic scenes to convince viewers. If the writers are patient, those quiet moments in the studio could become much more meaningful than any over-the-top love story. Sometimes watching two people encourage each other is far more romantic than watching them constantly tell each other they're in love. Of course, all of this brings me back to Kai, and I have mixed feelings about where he fits into Trina's future. I don't dislike Kai. In fact, I think he's a genuinely decent guy. He's treated Trina well, and they've shared some sweet moments together. But if I'm being honest, I've spent months waiting for their relationship to reach another level emotionally, and it just hasn't happened. Every time they're together, I find myself wanting a little more. A little more excitement, a little more chemistry, a little more of that feeling that makes me count down the days until their next scene. Maybe that's an unfair comparison because Spencer left such a lasting impression on Trina's life. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it carried emotional weight. You could feel how deeply they cared about each other, even during the difficult moments. Since Spencer's departure, I've been hoping Trina would eventually find someone who challenges her emotionally instead of simply standing beside her. Kai has been supportive, but support alone doesn't always create unforgettable television. That's why Simon immediately feels different to me. He isn't entering Trina's life through romance. He's entering through her dreams. That changes everything. He's helping her chase something she's passionate about, and that gives their relationship a completely different foundation. Before romance ever enters the picture, they'll already have respect, admiration, and shared goals. In my opinion, that's a much stronger place to begin than simple attraction. Another thing I can't ignore is Kai's position on the show. Right now, much of his importance still comes from his connection to Drew and his work with Willow. As long as those stories continue, Kai has a reason to stay involved. But soap operas reinvent themselves all the time. One storyline ends, another begins, and suddenly characters who seemed important yesterday quietly disappear tomorrow. Since Jen's Austin Astrup is currently a recurring cast member rather than a full-time contract player, I can't help wondering whether the writers are keeping their options open. Meanwhile, Simon feels like someone whose importance is actually increasing instead of fading. His introduction wasn't rushed, and his interactions with Trina already feel meaningful. That's usually a sign that the writers are investing in a longer journey rather than a short-term plot device. I've watched enough General Hospital over the years to recognize when the show is carefully laying the foundation instead of rushing to the payoff. That's why I'm genuinely excited to see what comes next. For the first time in quite a while, Trina's future feels unpredictable again, and that's exactly what keeps me coming back to General Hospital. Whether Simon ultimately becomes her next great love or simply the person who helps her find her confidence, I believe he's already changing the direction of her story. And if that journey eventually leads Trina to leave Kai behind in order to embrace a bigger future, I won't be shocked at all. After everything I've watched unfold, it actually feels like the most natural path the writers could take.